pals and viewers, hey, we have an Absolutely Al show page on Facebook now, and we want you to go there right now, like it, and follow us so you can get all the updates on what's going on with the Chocolate Diva Factory and the Absolutely Al show. Go to the Absolutely Al show page on Facebook, and you will be one of the Al's pals, and you'll know first before anyone else what's going on in the Chocolate Diva Factory and on the Absolutely Al show. Do it now. Thanks. Are you a business owner, a pastor of a ministry? Are you a political candidate? If so, you need to consider advertising with us here at the Absolutely Al show. We provide in-house production of videos and digital ads that will help you boost sales at your business, to get you new voters, or to get new members at your church. Whatever your business is, please consider advertising with us here at the Absolutely Al show. Just contact us at absolutelyal.promotions@gmail.com. Again, it's absolutelyal.promotions@gmail.com. Advertise with us. Our prices are affordable, and it will expand your business venture.
Time to party. Absolutely Al.
That Al is one foxy gal.
Absolutely Al. That's me. Absolutely Al. Absolutely Al.
She's a boss, and that ain't no floss, cause she's dripping with that spicy Al sauce. Wife, mother of a baby boy, and after 14 years, she's still a greatest
That's
boy.
right,
Brilliant,
baby.
resilient, passionate, and savvy. Ooh, that Al is such a baddie. Singer-songwriter, political fighter, trendsetter, ain't nobody better.
She's smooth, she's cool, breaks all the rules.
Show do, y'all.
Joyous, gorgeous, always victorious. Can't lie, she's fly, so sister ride or die. Who y'all talking about? Absolutely Al.
And now for the star of our show, wife, mom, best-selling author, singer, songwriter, stage play producer, cooking diva, and the queen of quarantine, Allison Randall Berewa.
Fabulous and fantastic Friday to all of you, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Absolutely Al show. Now, this segment is going to be hot, 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 because we have three strong-minded individuals with opposing political views. Let me tell y'all something. We can do a lot together, but what we cannot do at the same time is talk. So I hope I can contain these three strong-minded people while they attempt to give us some knowledge and give us their opinion on what's going on in America. Okay, who do we have tonight? I'm so glad you asked. From DeKalb County, Georgia, the former CEO and currently representing the 91st District here in the Georgia State Legislature, Representative Vernon Jones. We have a super bad sister who also once served in the Georgia General Assembly. She's an attorney and a political coach. Her name is LaDawn Blackett Jones. And he hails from Springfield, Massachusetts. He is a pastor in the Church of God in Christ, the one and only Bishop Talbot Swann II. Now, this is going to be a great show. But before we get into the show, let me drop this on you. Elections are coming up very, very soon, and we need everyone to participate. Your vote is your voice, and your voice is your power. Everyone who is 18 years old needs to be registered. If you are watching me right now and you have not registered to vote, find out how you can do it today. Don't wait. Do it today. And then once you've been registered to vote, look for your voter registration card in the mail or some type of correspondence from your local polling station, the Board of Election, to verify that you are indeed a registered voter. Then begin to collect information on all of the candidates, whether it's the presidential candidates, governors, congressmen, senators, even your local state government officials, and every referendum or amendment to your state constitution. Get informed. If you don't know, call somebody, ask someone that you trust. But by all means, register and vote. After this commercial break, we're going to come back with our panelists, and we're going to get ready to run. Come back. What's up, y'all? I have a big announcement. The Absolutely Al Show and Three Faces of Me have partnered together to sponsor the Book of the Month. Starting in August, we're going to have a Book of the Month every month. And then at the end of the month, we get together and do a virtual book discussion. August 2020's Book of the Month is The Ultimate Betrayal by me, Honey. Okay. So, Vex, the Ultimate Betrayal is about a brother and sister fighting over the same woman. I know you have never, ever heard of a little triangle as crazy as that. All you have to do is cash out me the $15, and I will send you an autographed copy of this book so you can go ahead and read it and be ready for the book discussion at the end of the month. That's $, Allison Fairwright. Or you can hit me up at PayPal at honeywrites, that's HONEYWRITES @gmail.com. Then email me your mailing address so I can get it out to you as soon as possible. Allison Randall Barrelwine @gmail.com. Hey, go ahead and go to Three Faces of Me page, like it and follow it. If you haven't already liked and followed the Absolutely Al Show page on Facebook, go ahead and do that too, so you can have updates to all that we're doing and what's going on, even giveaways. So don't forget, Vex, the Ultimate Betrayal is August 2020's Book of the Month. We will come back on the Three Faces of Me page on Thursday, August 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and have a great time discussing the book virtually. Go ahead and make it happen, and I'll see you August 27th so we can discuss Vex, the Ultimate Betrayal by me, Honey.
The host and production team at the Absolutely Al Show are committed to presenting high-quality and informative show segments with a variation of ideas in content and opinions with class and integrity. This is not a circus or the Jerry Springer Show. While passions and convictions may cause heated dialogue, adults are expected to present themselves with professionalism and dignity at all times.
These are the rules that our panelists all agreed to follow. Each panelist will be allotted a 2-minute briefing, which may include a self-intro, political declaration, business, ministry, mission promotion, or any other pertinent information. The host will ask each panelist a question and allow him or her 1 minute to respond. The panelist is expected to answer the question directly without reflection or avoidance. The host reserves the right to ask a follow-up question on the same topic or directly related to the previous question for additional information and or clarification. The host will allow panelists time for a 1 minute rebuttal to another panelist's answer to any question at her discretion. The host reserves the right to allow open yet respectful debate, verbal sparring between the panelists as long as it is recorded. However, when the host asks for silence, all panelists must adhere to her request or risk the possibility of being temporarily muted. Personal attacks and name calling are not accepted. Interruptions and talking over other panelists or the host will not be tolerated. The host will challenge all proven lies, accusations, and conspiracy theories on any given subject.
Now let me be even more clear. As it relates to the lost dollars, the resolution that I believe has been presented was for you all to vote against the referendum. What the referendum allows the citizens in unincorporated South Fulton to do is vote in support or against creating a city. That's what it does. So your resolution would be opposing a person's right to vote. And Webster, not me, says that voter suppression is using your political power in order to stop someone from expressing their right to vote. And you are a political body. The resolution would be a power, and that resolution would be presented to the 180 members of the House and the members of the Senate expressing you don't want someone else to have a right to vote.
Vernon Jones.
I want to bring in my guest, LaDon Jones, criminal defense attorney LaTanya Hines, a prosecutor.
LaDon Jones, certainly keep speaking up. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
And LaDon Jones is on the line from the Atlanta, Georgia area. She's an attorney there. We're going to break down a little bit about the Dassey case. Good to see you both this morning.
Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, the Planned Parenthood executive who was caught on tape joking about selling aborted baby body parts. With me now, former Georgia State Representative, Democratic strategist LaDon Jones. Representative Jones, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Good morning and welcome to the Law News Network. We have with us criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and former Georgia State Representative LaDon B. Jones. LaDon, thank you so much for joining us again here on Law News Network.
I'm so excited to be with you. Brilliant, beautiful, badass. No truer words could better describe this super bad powerhouse of a woman. She's a former Georgia State legislator, founding attorney of the LBJ Law, CEO and co-owner of Politicoach, and a sharp debater in all things political and concerning the law. I'm ecstatic that she has agreed to appear on our show today. Please welcome attorney LaDon Blackett-Jones.
Thank you, Al. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this spectacular program in a time like this, right? This is a time for us politicos or not get a chance to really see what it means to bring change. So thank you very much for having me here. She mentioned my name is LaDon Blackett-Jones, and I hope that I can bring to your viewers today information that really inspires them in this season, in 2020, the year of the pandemic, the year of the most vocal supporters of racial equality, and I'm so glad to be a part. As you mentioned, I'm an attorney. I do criminal law by trade, both prosecution and defense at the same time. I am also one half of Politico, so I help to train political candidates because this is what we need. This is the time where folks get to stand up and really make their voice be heard in the community we're in. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk about whatever you want to talk about that I hope inspires people to get up off their behinds and do something, whether it's become a poll worker, become a voter, to go knock on doors, to raise money for a candidate, because we need to get your president out. And this is the time. So thank you for having me. I'm so excited to join you today, and I hope that you'll invite me back.
Hello, America. This is Vernon Jones, and I'm a proud member of the Georgia House of Representatives. But I've also been a lifelong Democrat, too. But today, I've announced my support and endorsement of Donald J. Trump's campaign re-election. But one would say, now, why would a black man support Donald Trump? Well, I would reverse that. Why wouldn't a black man endorse Donald Trump? Isn't he the president that ushered in the lowest unemployment rate among blacks before the pandemic crisis? Isn't he the president that signed the Criminal Justice Reform Act? And finally, isn't he the president that overwhelmingly supported financially historical black colleges in which I'm a proud graduate of North Carolina Central University? I 100% support Donald Trump. And I want to call on every patriot, every great American out there across this country, regardless of your race or whatever, gender, orientation. I want to ask all of you, young people, seniors, all in between, join me in re-electing Donald J. Trump as a president, our next president, our re-elected president of the United States. Peace out, America.
Vernon Jones is no stranger to controversy, and so his endorsement of Donald Trump for re-election has caused some backlash from a lot of his constituents.
You are an elected Democrat there in the state of Georgia, as I understand it, but yet you're supporting the Republican president's re-election bid. How is that going over in your district?
I'm going to remain on the battlefield. I'm going to complete my term. I'm going to continue to put my country before my party.
Developing right now, a Democratic state representative says he's calling it quits.
When you don't hold public office, you don't have to have that muzzle on your mouth.
Vernon Jones announced today he is leaving his seat in the Georgia legislature, effective today.
The Democratic Party is not the party to help African Americans.
And he's pressing forward with his support for Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump has done more in the last 3 years for African Americans than the Democratic Party and Democratic presidents have in my lifetime.
As he gains national support, many of Jones's constituents, who are mostly black and mostly Democrat in DeKalb and Rockdale counties, tell CBS 46 they believe Jones is neglecting them and does not represent their views.
This is not about my constituents. It's far bigger than my constituents.
Why continue to run as a Democrat if you truly align with more Republican ideology?
Well, again, the Democratic Party left me. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. I refuse to put partisan politics before the American people.
Despite speculation of a political promotion, Jones says he is not considering a position in the Trump administration.
The only thing that I've considered was my convictions. I haven't talked to anyone from the Trump administration in terms of offering me this or that. Don't need to. What I'm doing is a much bigger argument here.
Private consultant, state legislator representing Georgia's 91st district in DeKalb County. He's a former CEO of DeKalb County, a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and a Democrat who proudly supports Donald Trump. And he's here today to tell us why. Please welcome Representative Vernon Jones.
Thank you so much for having me, Al. And let me just say to your viewers and your listeners and those who will be involved in this tape and your series, that I'm glad to be a part of this, and hopefully it'll be informative and we can share and have good dialogue. I do want to pay tribute to your dad, Billy Randall, former Representative Billy Randall, who I served with in the Georgia General Assembly. My freshman year, I was assigned to his committee, Special Judiciary Committee, and he taught me a whole lot. I would never forget that. And he was also inspiration to me moving on, being elected county executive. And then At the same time, I served with his daughter, who sat right next to me in his seat, so Nikki Randall. So I want to say hello to them, and obviously to your mom, Loretta Randall, who really holds the Randall family together. But I'm just honored to be here. I look forward to having a conversation.
And the reason you can be a wounded praiser because our Savior is a wounded healer. Hallelujah. Oh, my. Glory.
Give me proof that blacks are affecting black people in a negative way. What are they doing to affect blacks in a negative way?
Well, you know, if I've got to give a black man so-called proof about the effects of systemic racism in the United States of America, its current and its historical effects on African Americans, then that is problematic.
All right, here now on what promises to be a pretty fiery debate. Pastor and activist Bishop Talbert Swann and Dan Bongino, host of the Dan Bongino podcast.
90.7 WTCC. Good morning. Welcome to the Spoken Word. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swann the second.
Pastor Bishop Talbert W. Swann II. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Look at you. So I've been following you on the Twitter, and you've been, I talk about the smoke I give, but Lord have mercy, people's eyebrows are singed off messing with you on Twitter. People try to come for you, and they aren't heard from again. And it's amazing. And I love your comebacks. I love what you talk about, what you stand for. It gives me life.
In so many racial comments and accusations in the presidential election, I sat down for a conversation with Bishop Talbert Swann. We started with his thoughts and concerns about the state of racial relations in our country right now.
America is completely polarized. It's divided across racial lines. The late, great W.E.B. Du Bois once said that the problem of the 20th century was the problem of the color line. He wrote that over 100 years ago. And it's, to me, a shocking disgrace that a century after he wrote that, it is just as applicable today as it was then, because the problem in America is still the problem of the color line.
I spoke with Bishop Talbert Swann II about what Dr. King would say about the state of race relations today.
Well, I think Dr. King would be pleased in terms of progress that has been made in the 50 years since he was assassinated. He certainly would have been elated with the election of the first African-American president and seeing Barack Obama serve 2 terms. But I think he would be sadly disturbed at the racial polarization in the nation that we see today.
Pastor of Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ in Springfield, Massachusetts, prelate, activist, author, chaplain for Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, radio host, and Springfield's NAACP president. He's a resounding voice of truth against corrupt power and against inequality on behalf of African Americans from the mountain to the prairie, from sea to shining sea. We are pleased and so honored to have him here with us today. He is Bishop Talbert Swann II.
Al, thank you so much for having me today. I'm delighted to be here, to be a part of this panel, and just to share from my perspective what's going on in our nation today. Today we live in a racially polarized nation where civil unrest is out on our streets, where our economy has been decimated, where Black people are dealing with the dual pandemic of police and of COVID. And so we live in interesting times in which, once again, strange fruit has begun to fly from our trees, and we began to see things reminiscent of the 50s and 60s. And so there are those who talk about making America great again, when they're really trying to bring it back to a day when it was not so great, a day that we have surpassed and have gotten beyond. And so I'm just glad to be here to have this conversation and hope that your listening audience will be able to get something out of what we have to say and what we have to offer. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Absolutely. Hey, y'all, let's get it on. Let's get it on. Okay. So, no one received any questions prior to this, but I did send you a list of topics that we will try to, I hope we'll be able to cover them all, but let's just jump right in. Let's start with a report card, if you will, on our current president, Donald Trump, shall we? Okay. I want each panelist to give a letter grade, choosing from the standard alphabet system that is used in most public school systems around the country, which includes letters A to F. In combination now with a numeric grade, ranging from 0 to 100%. These are the areas and class subjects, if you will. Okay, starting with you, ladies first, y'all. Just get used to it. Handling of COVID-19. How do you think, Attorney Jones, Donald Trump has done when dealing with this deadly pandemic, whereas today, over 169,000 American souls have already died? Give him a grade on that, and then tell me why.
He gets a 20 from me, a failing 20. And let me tell you, the only reason why he might get that 20% is because he's made a standard, following in the way of Governor Cuomo, of making daily briefings, incoherent briefings, but I do think communication is important when you're a leader. It's the only reason why he has 20%. People have died because he did not take this serious, because he is prescribing without any medical knowledge, any advanced degree, medications that don't work. He's giving false information. He's giving false standards. He has failed us. And if you don't believe us, believe him. Look at his own tweet. Under President Barack Obama, there was another pandemic. Thousands of Americans died, not hundreds of thousands of Americans. I hope that people take what's happening in November very serious, because this pandemic is not going away no matter who's our president. But at least we have to give a chance to somebody who's going to come in here and take this thing serious and do it the right way.
Representative Jones, what you got to say about that? How has he done, according to you? Give the president letter and numeric grade on his handling of COVID-19.
I give him a B on the letter, as a letter of his grade, and here's why. If you know how government works, you have the federal, state, and local. When you look at this pandemic, COVID disease, virus, where did it come from? It came from China. And when America did find out about it, President Trump did the right thing. And what did he do? He canceled all trips coming from China. Immediately he was called xenophobia, homophobia, and all these other phobias, that he was discriminating against the Chinese and Chinese Americans. But he didn't do that. He made a move quickly. Now, Dr. Fauci and many others, including Nancy Pelosi, including the media, the liberal media, all said, well, this is nothing more than a flu. Matter of fact, it may not be as bad as the flu. But as this disease spread, it got worse. And then everyone started blaming the other. Now, you and I both know, and your audience should know, that the federal government does not impose local rules and regulations. That comes from the cities. What the government did do was give some guidelines based on the science and the health advice from the health officials and from the scientists. Now, this is something nobody's dealt with in our lifetime. This is one disease that you can't see. You can't slap it. You can't shoot it. You can't push it away. This president has had to deal with a very difficult pandemic crisis, very difficult. Now, again, the scientists, as we say, listen to the scientists, they have different reasons and different views and different opinions. And we don't know who to believe now, but I can tell you this,
it wasn't the president that killed those seniors in New York. That was a decision made by the state of New York, by the governor, Governor Cuomo, who decided to send seniors that were infected with that virus to where? To nursing homes. He made that decision. The federal government did not make that decision. Unlike the governor in Georgia, Governor Kemp said, before a sick person can go to those areas, to the nursing homes, there has to be a protocol that they have to follow to make sure they don't get in touch, or they don't infect the others. Now, the president didn't start all these marches with people with no mask on, and they're marching up and down, yelling and screaming. It spread it that way because politicians made a political decision based on public health and public safety. So let's stop blaming. I think he's done a good job.
So your answer is a B, right? Your answer is a B.
My answer is he's done, well, my answer is a B.
Okay.
But most of the blame should go to the states, and it should go to the local governments on how they handle it. It's not
you over your time, Mr. Jones. I'm gonna have to go to Bishop Swann, okay? But I'm gonna go back with I got another follow-up question, okay? Go ahead, Bishop.
He absolutely gets an F, and he gets a 0 in my book. I'm not certain what Representative Jones is talking about in terms of, first of all, when people were marching in the streets long before the George Floyd murder caused people to come out on the streets, Donald Trump was tweeting to his followers who were resisting social distancing, saying, liberate Minnesota, liberate this state, liberate that state, inciting them to march on state capitals without masks, without social distancing, spreading this virus. Remember now, this was known back in October of last year. This was talked about when they held Event 201 in New York. The federal government briefed Israel on the coronavirus pandemic in November. Yet at the end of February, Trump was calling it a hoax. In March and April, he was holding rallies. He was saying to liberate states. He was telling the governor of Michigan to cut a deal with those who did not want to social distance. As recently as July, he was holding rallies in Tulsa, Oklahoma that did not require the wearing of a mask. Herman Cain was at that rally. Herman Cain is now dead of COVID-19. He has been completely irresponsible. His messaging has been all over the map on it. He has denied the science. He has given irresponsible treatment advice. He has talked about injecting disinfectant, putting UV light under your body. I mean, his response has been completely reprehensible. And then when all else fails, blame Obama. He then blamed Obama for the lack of PPP equipment. Now listen, you've been president for 3.5 years. You just noticed that there was a low level of equipment in the stockpile when this pandemic became a problem. So this guy, what he does is what he typically does, takes credit for anything positive, takes responsibility for nothing else. In his own words, no, I take no responsibility for this. He gets an absolute F on this.
Okay, let me stop right there, and I'm going to encourage the audience at this time. As you've heard our 3 panelists, grade President Donald Trump on the COVID-19. I want to see your comments down below. Get up. Let me see the grades. Let me see the grades. Now, Representative Jones, I see you itching to want to address some of the things that you heard Bishop Swann say. You got a minute. Let's address it. Address specifically him calling it a hoax very early on. Address specifically hearing about this, being briefed about it as far back as October. Let me hear from you on that.
Okay, first of all, I think it's disingenuous and intellectually dishonest to in any way relate Herman Cain's death to that rally. He doesn't know how Herman got that. No one knows. He didn't even know Herman Cain or his previous conditions, like being a cancer survivor. So to say that To bring that in, Herman King into this discussion is just outright outrageous.
Okay, well, can I interject something right here?
No, you asked me to respond.
I'm asking a question. Can I interject something right here? I'm going to give you some time. Hold on.
So I'm going to get off and y'all go ahead and talk.
No, wait a minute. No, I'm going to let you. I wanted to ask something.
Herman Cain was anti-mask. Herman Cain mocked the wearing of masks. It was irresponsible for Trump to hold a rally that did not require. He was not holding this rally in January, February. He was holding this rally last month, almost 6 months into the pandemic, not requiring a mask. Completely irresponsible. And it was irresponsible for Herman to be there with his precondition without it. So there is a connection.
Hold up right there. Can we cut, Lanita?
Yes, ma'am.
I was. I don't know what just happened. I'm a very fair person. Anybody who knows me knows that Allison Roundabout would not bring anyone on her show to ambush them. I have known Vernon long as I have known anybody on the panel. I've never met Bishop Swann in person. I've never met Attorney Jones in person. Vernon Jones, I have been around most of my adult life. I am perplexed. I don't understand why he left. But we're going to go on. We're going to go on with this show because there is much information, a wealth of information sitting right here with our two panelists who decided to stay on.
Allison, can I say something?
Oh, yeah, of course you can.
So I think it is a reality of the time that we're in. There's nobody that can look at the president of the United States honestly and not see the many reasons why he should not be the president. And so the amount of gusto, the amount of intentional, willful turning a blind eye that it takes to tolerate that level makes it hard for someone to sit through the level of truth that the bishop just laid down very clearly, coherently, in order of how it occurred, right? Chronological order. So don't take it personal. It's a reality. And that's why shows like yours are important, because the more people who have a chance to hear it as coherently as it was just delivered on that plate that the bishop just delivered it on, they might still go in the booth and vote for Donald Trump. But at the least we can ask that when they hit that moment that the representative just hit, they just stay home in November.
Thank you. Bishop, I didn't take no lies in anything that you said, but please know that I was trying to give him an opportunity to respond to something you said. I just needed to be able to pose a question and invite him to just be quiet for not even 5 seconds. I promise you. I just needed to ask him to respond to something that you said, and I don't understand, but we're gonna go on. Let's talk about racism, y'all. Let's talk about racism. In light of Ahmaud Arbery's unjustified murder at the hands of two vicious men in a community that they felt they had the power and the right to police, and I don't know what they were doing. And then you look at George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. What do you think, Bishop, is the solution from a political standpoint to those types of injustices when they still haven't arrested anybody for Breonna's death? It took months for someone to be held accountable for Ahmaud Arbery's death. And even as the Attorney General in the state of Minnesota prepares to prosecute those police officers who are responsible for George Floyd's death, there's so much going on. What do you think is the solution, or a part of the solution, coming from a political standpoint, Bishop?
I think there has to be a restructuring of policing as we know it in America. We have to understand that modern policing is nothing but the descendant of slave patrols. That really was the start of policing. Policing really started to protect white property owners from black people. And even today, that's the way policing is seen, to protect white folks from us. And the problem is we have a systemic problem with racism within the context of modern policing. And we often try to deal with it by diversity, by putting black faces in white spaces. And what happens is, more likely than not, those black faces wind up assimilating to the culture that already exists. And what you have is black and brown police officers treating black and brown people the same way white officers treat us, because the system has not changed. And so we have a real opportunity when you begin to talk about defunding the police, when you begin to talk about doing some real structural changes around police, when you begin to talk about real civilian review of the police to hold them accountable, that provides an opportunity to change policing as we know it. Because if we don't do some structural changes, all we're going to do is to continue to play musical faces and have the same results over and over again.
Come on, give me some of that. Give me your take on that, Attorney Jones.
So I agree 100% with what Bishop is saying. However, here's my concern. I just want to give the other end of his same spectrum. One of the concerns I have is that we do a pendulum swing in an effort to correct some very egregious wrongs. All the wrongs that the bishop mentioned, we go so far in the opposite direction that we almost cut off our own nose to spite our face, right? I'll give you an example. Senator Kamala Harris running for vice president. Because she has spent her career as a prosecutor, because we know that, as the bishop says, systematically, right, our system is set up where it has hurt black and brown bodies. It is presumed that because she worked very hard within that system, that she's a bad guy, that all cops are bad guys, that all prosecutors are bad guys. Now, I didn't mention in my intro, but I started my career as a prosecutor. All right, I left Tulane Law School, and all I wanted to do was to help the victims of crime, right? To help keep the communities in South Fulton, Georgia, safe. And I did. And I left as a chief senior prosecutor. And I worked very hard with very hardworking police people to do the right thing. Now, I will say, as a 40-year-old prosecutor, because I still prosecute cases, I'm very different than the 26-year-old prosecutor. I made mistakes because I'm human. I made mistakes because it took time. But I worked hard. And it hurts to hear the criticism against Senator Kamala Harris because, and the criticism is not unfair, right? It is a part of the system. But we have a pendulum swing going on. So as important as it is that I think we need to address racism, those of us who understand that the way that we fix criminal justice is by having good black and brown cops, having good black and brown prosecutors, judges, sheriffs, everything that you need to make this system work. But we can't beat them up on the way there, because when we talk about fixing racism, we're cutting up our nose to spite our face.
I want to hear Bishop respond to that.
I don't disagree. I think that that we have a lot of good people that are in law enforcement, and unfortunately, because of the very tenuous relationship that exists between African American community and all facets of law enforcement, sometimes they get painted with the brush by which we see the entire system. But I've worked with some folks within law enforcement that have been excellent in terms of bringing about some level of equity and fairness. So I agree with what the attorney is saying.
Jenna Morgan, your independent paparazzi consultant, and better known as your favorite jury lady.
Not a planned question, but since so much has happened that was not planned, I just said we just need to follow the spirit, let it flow. My problem at this point, with regards to Kamala Harris being on the ticket, is that so many people, I think they expected it, because I think it was kind of leaked and kind of spilled a little bit beforehand. Is that they're going after her so hard. And they're missing focus on the big picture, which is, in my point of view, that we have an even greater problem facing us that is in no comparison as minimal as what she has done in the past. It amazes me how people can dig up her past, dig up Joe Biden's past, and we're going to talk about some of the things that Joe Biden has said and done in his career, 40 years plus career. But they have the tendency to go after her for what she did 20 years ago and disregarding everything that Trump has done in the last 3.5 years. And when what I have in mind specifically about what he has done, the divisiveness, the dog whistles, well, it's not even a dog whistle anymore. He says things that he knows will rile up his base. And this new birther movement, I want you all to talk about that. Someone from an attorney wrote an op-ed in Newsmax challenging her citizenship, her eligibility to even run for vice president. Attorney Jones, I know you know the law. Speak to that particular point.
So there's a lot going on there. In general, here's what we know. For years, well, there's two parts. So first of all, I think anybody who puts themselves out for elected office is not beyond criticism. My only problem is is that was the last part of the game. See, we have primaries first. And in a primary, the people who are on your team but ain't on your team, you kind of tell all the things you dislike. But if they win or otherwise become a part of the ticket, that was the last part of the game. We're on the part B of the game where we now go against Trump and all his divisiveness, right? So I don't mind that they have criticism. I just mind that kind of not following along with the rules that make the most sense for us to win to beat Donald Trump, right? I also recognize that Russia and many other foreign entities has tried to become involved in our elections, and they know the way to become involved in our elections, as we have already seen in 2016, right? It's to stir up some mess. So I'm wondering, how much is it really mess, and how much is it that they're injecting themselves into it? Because we know our people, right? Since when do we start thinking that it's bad to be 1/4 Indian, even if it's a different type of Native American? Since when has that been a bad thing? We've never had that issue, right? So someone else is injecting something into our waters that I think is not natural, because that's not us. At the end of the day, I think those people who are talking are either already not voters, or they're going to come out and vote and support. They're just talking. But it's dangerous, right? And I don't want to tell people what they should and shouldn't say. You can't tell grown people what to say as long as they're getting involved. So I would just have to say this. If you got criticism, I get it, but make sure you're checking all those other boxes, which means supporting local and federal candidates financially or with your energy by going out and making calls and knocking on doors, or support your local party. I'm not a big party person. I don't really do the Democratic Party, Republican Party, but my principles are progressive, right? And so because of that, whatever it is that you need to do to get involved, I invite people to join me. I just signed up to be a poll worker for the first time, right? So we're having problems with getting these things processed. Almost pulled my hair out when I was out there, and I was like, come on, lady, you can move just a little bit faster. No, I can move a little bit faster. So if you care, go ahead and be Sir Tough-a-Lot on the typewriter on social media talking about Kamala, but just make sure you show up to the polls and do what it is that you need to do.
Birtherism 2.0, Bishop.
Well, here's the thing. Kamala was born in Oakland. I mean, what you gonna do with that? I mean, it just, the whole notion that she's not eligible. Is she 35? Over 35? Yes. Was she born in America? Yes. Those are the only two requirements. So I'm not understanding this whole notion of whether or not she's eligible. I have a huge problem with our people. Now, first, I agree with Attorney Jones that everybody who offers themselves for public office is open for public scrutiny. And I also believe that if I criticize Biden's record, that does not mean I'm pro-Trump. I can criticize Trump and Biden at the same time, and Kamala. Everybody deserves scrutiny. What I have a problem with is this notion that somehow Kamala is not Black enough because her parents are not African American. So therefore, if she is not a descendant of slaves in America, that she doesn't qualify to be Black. And my message to my brothers and sisters here in America, yes, Blacks who descended from slaves. I'm a descendant. My father was the grandson of slaves. I'm the great-grandson of slaves. We have a unique justice claim in America. I believe in reparations. I believe that we ought to be made whole for 238 years of free labor, 155 years of Jim Crow and everything that we dealt with there. However, we originated from Africa, as all Black people, as all people did. And simply because our brothers and sisters were dropped off before our ancestors were, they were dropped off in the Caribbean and in South America and in other places before our ancestors were dropped off in North America, doesn't make them any less Black than we are. At the end of the day, when white folks look at Kamala, or whether they look at my daughters or someone who descended from slaves in America, they see Blackness. In the words of Malcolm, you don't catch hell because you're a Democrat or Republican. You don't catch hell because you're a Mason or an Elk. You catch hell because you're Black, plain and simple. At the end of the day, Kamala is black, and we need to stop this nonsense that simply because of her lineage, she doesn't qualify to be black.
I told you. So we got to address the elephant in the room. Y'all know Joe Biden said some crazy stuff, y'all. I mean, he does not have a perfect record in his political career. A lot of people saying that we are being forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. The "you ain't black" comment he made on the Breakfast Club. When he referred to Barack Obama when they were opposing each other in the primary back in 2007, leading up to his presidency in 2008, he said that he was articulate and clean. He was the first one. He said at one time that poor kids are just as bright as white kids, meaning poor and black were synonymous. We got to talk about it, y'all. We gotta figure out how do they keep him from saying the things he says, and let's try to measure the damage, some of the things he's done, and even go back to busting. Kamala had to check him on the stage during the primaries. So y'all, we got to talk about that a little bit. Go on. Jump on that,
So if I were a consultant on his campaign, I would be like, let's roll out these Biden, Barack Obama memes that we had back in 2016 and just keep him quiet, right? From here on, let's just go on the spirit of hope and change. But since we can't, I think that we need to have the discussion about, and I kind of said this before, we're human, right? Joe Biden is a man of his time. And so the question for me is not so much of how many times does he get it very painstakingly wrong, but is he willing to be open and acknowledge and fix it? Because I think him openly, now just remember, we're in a reality show environment, right? We're used to following the Kardashians and all those people around, right? So how amazing would it be if we had a president in this time that we could follow around as he gaffes, gets corrected, and comes to realization? Because at the end of the day, I have to recognize my privilege. So I'm from Southwest Atlanta. So where I grew up, I'm not a minority, right? All the people look like me. My elected officials, my entrepreneurs, my business owners. It wasn't until I joined the General Assembly and went to a predominantly white college that I realized how much of a minority that I was. And they made sure that it was clear. But because of that privilege that I have to not feel like a minority at a portion of my life, I had some things wrong culturally too. I was culturally insensitive about several things, right? Whether it be the LGBT community, whether it be the disabled community, things that I was not privy to, the political correctness in my bubble that I was in. And I learned and I was wrong. And so me being able to step back and say, ooh, I'm still learning at the age I am now, kind of can't be surprised that Joe Biden is still learning at the age he is too, considering how big and tight his bubble was. I wish we had a candidate that was perfect, but we don't. So can you remember on the 5 Heartbeats when the guys messed up on the stage and they got into a fight and then they turned it into a part of the show and they made it like, you were gonna learn from this? We might need to turn Joe Biden's gaffes into part of the show to teach other people how to have that racial reconciliation, because I think that might be the best we can get out of them.
Go ahead, Bishop. What you got to say?
Well, you know, the reality is Joe Biden, much like Trump, is a 70-some-odd-year-old white man who comes from an era in which, you know, black folk were looked at in certain ways. Howbeit, you know, ideologically and politically, they have some stark differences. There are a lot of similarities. I've been very critical of Joe Biden's record, his record regarding the crime bill, his record regarding some of the things that you've highlighted that he's said. There were times when Republicans were offering legislation that Joe said wasn't tough enough. This was a Democrat saying that they weren't being tough enough. He advocated for longer sentences. He advocated to keep people in jail longer. He is one of the architects of modern mass incarceration. That's a reality. I know if Representative Jones had stayed on, he would have tried to pin me to Joe Biden without checking the record that I've been critical of Biden and Trump and Kamala. That when I advocate on behalf of the Black community, I don't advocate based on Democrat or Republican. So there are some serious issues and concerns and problems with Joe Biden's record. But the question is, are there going to be people around Joe that can rein Joe in, that can get in Joe's ear, show him the error of his ways, let him know that this is not the direction that we need to go in terms of serving your constituency? I believe that he is going to be much more pliable than a Donald Trump, because what we do know is Donald Trump doesn't listen to anybody. And on the rare occasion that he takes a pause and doubles back, he comes right back with what he originally wanted to say in the first place. So I believe he is an existential threat to humanity right now. There are those who said, we lived through 8 years of Obama, y'all will live through 8 years of Trump. There's 170,000 people who would beg to differ with that. And I really believe that for all the concerns that we have with Joe Biden, we cannot afford to allow a Donald Trump to have 4 more years in office.
Mm-hmm. I want to say that I follow you very closely on Twitter, and you have been very critical of Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, I mean, you've taken him to task. And so if anybody thinks that you're giving him a pass, I'm a witness that you are not. I have seen it, I've read it, so, and you were a Bernie supporter, am I right, Attorney Jones?
I was Bernie's state director in 2016, and I'm not one of those people. I was on his boat before, so I'm gonna be on it again. So when we had 11,000 people in the primary, I took a step back. I reevaluated them to really determine who would get my support. I still do not think anybody had a record of progressive positions as consistently as Bernie Sanders did. So I was still a supporter. But to the bishop's point, what we need to know right now in our criticism of Joe Biden is, does he have someone that will be in his ear? And I know this isn't going to happen, but what I hope to see at the DNC, right, was not just the announcement of Senator Harris as his VP, but, a whole line of intelligent, smart, hardworking people, from Bernie Sanders to Susan Rice to just everyone who would be a part of his administration. I know that's something they do later, but I feel like in this time, for Democrats to win this, the variety of different liberals, Democrats, progressives, however you want to define yourself, that we have, need to see someone that they identify with. And they need to be on that stage so he can say, all of these people, I guarantee you, will be in my cabinet if you vote for me. That's what we need right now to kind of bring us together.
I agree. I think that his cabinet, if we throw our support behind him, which African Americans traditionally do, especially African American women, we have supported the Democratic Party for years. And we resurrected Joe Biden's campaign in South Carolina. He had not won a primary. He had not won a primary election during that cycle. He knew, hey, I'm just gonna chill, wait till we get to South Carolina, and that's what he did. And Black women were behind that, and so that's why I have told people who have come for Kamala on social media, or even calling me, having the audacity to call me, I'm saying, hey, hell. Now, if Black women are good enough to resurrect his campaign and to carry him through the rest of the primaries, we're good enough to be on the ticket with him. So, chill with all that noise, and that's why I've been clapping back on him.
But
y'all, we gotta talk about this postal service. Y'all, what is Trump trying to do, Bishop? What is he trying to do?
He's trying to sabotage the election. You know, they've done their research, and their research tells them that the persons most likely to do mail-in voting are the persons who will not be voting for Donald Trump. And therefore, in order to steal the election, rig the election, we're going to sabotage the Postal Service. Who ever heard of an American president trying to sabotage, defund? You won't defund the police, but you defund the post office. I mean, it's insanity. And then when you think about it, everyone around him, from Kayleigh McNamara, whatever her name is, to Bill Barr, to everybody else in his circle, has done mail-in voting, including him. But all of a sudden, it's rife with fraud when it's never really been done on the scale that is proposed to be done on this year because of COVID. And so basically, he's trying to steal an election. And don't get it twisted. When he comes and he says, he tweets out, should we postpone the election? He's putting feelers out there in terms of what they really want to do. When he tweets out there that we won't know who won the election for months, basically, he's trying to set the stage that no matter what happens on November 3rd, to try to stay in office and not give up the presidency and make a claim that somehow this election was rigged if it doesn't go his way. That's what this whole thing is set up to do.
Mm-hmm. But
How do we stop him? How do we stop him, Attorney Jones? How do we stop this? How do we get the message out on our plan to stop it?
So Donald Trump is doing the work for us. This is our election to lose. We know from their research, by stopping mail-in voting, it could hurt our numbers. But we know from our research that if our registered voters, simply the people who are completely registered, go out and vote in this election and vote against Donald Trump, we win. And so it is our job to listen to these things. Now, see, here's the thing that I'm hoping for. And Bishop, you know, put this in the prayer book when you pray next Sunday, is that his research missed one important thing. Don't challenge us, right? Your research showed that we mail in, but don't challenge us. Don't rig the system. We've been fighting against this rigged system for so long. Nothing motivates us more than thinking you're gonna cheat. You gonna cheat me, right? You're gonna cheat my mama? We get up. And so it is my hope that this is our election to lose, because we are going to be motivated by his. You know, we're getting a little accustomed to this pandemic, even with the numbers going up. And so it's my hope that by early voting in October in some states and the November election, that we have figured out how to get out there and make sure that we vote, whether it's by mail, whether it's in person, whatever the case may be. I'm already seeing on social media the rules to go out. It's just kind of our job to make sure that our family members, our cousins, our co-workers, the ones that we normally, I had an assistant that worked for me, Al, for 2 years before I did Bernie Sanders. She never voted. And I had never been so bold to ask her, hey, you going to the polls, right? For the 2 local elections, because, you know, politics is kind of personal. You know, we're really going to ask people their politics at work. We got to break that, right? I should have asked her. And I will never let the opportunity to let anybody who is in my circle around me and I ask, hey, do you vote? You're voting for Biden, right? If you don't vote, let me help you find out how to vote. Let me help make sure you get to vote. That's all we have to do, right? Pick our 20 people in 2020 that we're going to ensure make it to the polls. And it's ours to lose. That's how we win.
Well, information is just very important at this point. There are people like me. I don't go out, you all. I just don't go out. I leave the shopping to my husband. He's a first responder. He has to be out there to see his patients. So, but I'm home all the time, my son and I. So I have taken it upon myself to make sure that I check in with people who are older people, people who are new to this whole political process, to give them the correct information. Request your mail-in, request your absentee ballot. When you get it, fill it out right then and there. Don't tarry. Go ahead. If you can drop it off, just ride in the car somewhere. Find out where your locations are within your city. Go to the Secretary of State's website in your state, y'all, please. In Georgia, it's www.sos.ga.gov. Find out. Make sure that you are able to see your voter page. Once you drop your ballot off, or if you mail it in early, go on that page and make sure that your vote has been counted. Give them 48 hours, 72 at the most. But follow up. It is so important. People say vote like your life depends on it. No, vote because our lives do depend on it. I want to kind of shift the subject a little bit and talk about the economy. People are on the brink of being evicted. People are having to make choices between buying food or prescription drugs. Bishop, they need to hear from you to talk about the economy. What do you think Congress needs to do? They have a little break right now, chilling, while people are, pulling their hair out about where their next penny is coming from. What do you think Congress should be doing right now?
So let's first look at a historical perspective, because one of the main talking points of the Trumpites, and one that Rep. Jones is fond of, is talking about the economy and talking about low black unemployment, etc. under Trump. If you go back to 2009, when Barack Obama took office, we had a major deep recession he inherited from the Bush administration. It was the worst since the Great Depression at that time. Black unemployment got as high as 16.8%. By the time Barack Obama left office, black unemployment was down to 6.8%. It only dropped 1% under Donald Trump to 5.8. Now, was it the lowest black unemployment rate ever? Yes. But it dropped 1% under Trump. He was not responsible for the lowest black unemployment. But they keep using that talking point over and over again. He said he would grow the economy at a rate 4%. Never has he done that. Hasn't happened. The deficit has continually gone up. The jobs started being lost before the pandemic happened. Now we're talking about nearly 11% unemployment nationwide, 15% for black people. We're back up to 15% unemployment for black people, 40 million jobs lost. Many persons will not get called back to work. We're literally talking about the worst type of recession again since Great Depression levels. Now, we're talking about one stimulus package that has passed. The Senate's gone home without passing a second one. This president stood up and boasted about sending people $400 a week. And I'm trying to figure out what family can live off of $400 a week. He's talking about sending $3,400 to families of four. That's what, a month of bills to be able to pay. The reality is, if we are going to have to deal with a pandemic in which it's going to affect our ability to work, then Congress needs to figure out how it supports families throughout this pandemic. Now, for years and years, when we talked about reparations, I believe it was Sandy Darity who had done a study one time and said it would cost about $2.3 trillion to give Black people the equivalent of what 40 acres and a mule would be today. And many of the critics said America couldn't afford to do that. Notice, if you will, when this pandemic started and white folk were out of work and were being affected, they found $2 trillion under a mattress somewhere and just started handing money out, you know, left and right. Is when they need the money, they can figure out a way to find it. So trust me, America has the resources to support people through this pandemic. They just have to have the will to do it. And Congress has to look beyond their bipartisan bickering and do what's in the best interest of the American people and not what's in the best interest of their individual party.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I do not envy the position of those in our Congress, because I can understand the problem with trying to create policy in the political space that we're in with a president who ain't gonna do right. If he does win in November, God forbid, that means he's gonna continue not to do right. Can Congress afford to continue to support people through the remainder? I agree with you. When the money, Bishop, I 100% agree. When they need it, they find it. I'm also concerned that my children and my children's children will have to pay that back. That doesn't matter to me, right? Because I know as a small business owner how much I pay in taxes. I don't mind doing my part. I really don't. But Lord, writing that check to the IRS does not feel good at all because of how hard that I work for my coins, right? But I'll do it. I'll do my part. But I can see why Congress could be hesitant if we know Trump and Kemp is going to continue to put us in harm's way. Look at what's going on with these schools opening, right? They know that opening these schools don't make, well, no, I take that back. They should know. But I believe there are people who wholeheartedly have listened to their president and still believe this is a hoax. And listen, as much as I dislike, I'll listen to him too. I thought this was going to be like a 2-week, 4-week, 6-week thing. And then we hit around the end of May and I said, well, wait a minute now. We're still doing this. This is a real thing, right? And that's because that's what our leadership told us early on. And so I get why people are looking at it wrong. And therefore I get why Congress has to really consider not only how do we handle what's happening today, but what happens for the long term. And I can't say if that's giving out checks. Yes, we need to solve these immediate needs, but what are we going to do long term? And it goes back to what you've been talking about the whole time now. If we get folks out here and change this election in November, then maybe we can come up with some sound policy that actually would make sense.
You mentioned going back to school. Bishop, why do you think, I know you know the answer because I do too, I just want you to articulate it for the viewing audience. Y'all listen up because he's going to drop his knowledge on y'all. Why do you think Trump and all his cronies are pushing for our children to go back to school in the middle of a pandemic while over 18 states, if not more today, the numbers in those states are spiking, are steadily going up, and the death rate is at 169,000 plus. What is he getting out of this? What's going on?
Well, they believe that part of the solution to stimulating the economy is for people to be back at work. When you're literally talking about thousands of teachers and paraprofessionals and janitors and administrators going back to work, you're talking about a bump of stimulus to the economy. Now, they also are keenly aware that in most of Americans' so-called urban centers, that the majority of the students are Black and brown students. In a city like mine, 75% of the students in our school system are Latino and African American because of white flight into the suburbs and those who go to parochial schools or private schools or home schools. It's going to be Black and brown kids that are put at risk of COVID-19. And so when it's your children at risk, they don't care. That's the reason why, we were having trend on Twitter, Barron first. You want kids to go back to school? Send Barron's behind back to school first. Send Ivanka's kids back to school. Send Trump Jr. and Eric's kids to school, and let's test them out and see how they work out first before I send my children back to school. It's disingenuous for them to pretend that they don't know what the end result is. But then again, they told you they know. Yeah, some are going to catch COVID, some are going to die. But as it was the lieutenant governor of Texas who basically said some things are worth dying for. Well, let your kids go and die, not mine. It's insulting when you have wealthy white men and women who send their kids to private school or who can afford to have them homeschooled, telling you to send yours to school. And now all of a sudden they're talking about how many poor kids only get to eat at school and how many parents need their kids to be at school so they can go to work. Now all of a sudden they're becoming so altruistic and concerned about the plight of the poor that they never cared about before until this pandemic happened. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to undermine, because there are a segment of all communities of all colors and political affiliations who are having a hard time with this school thing for their children, right? In my role as a solicitor, I was interviewing an officer preparing for trial, and she had a kindergartner. She's a first responder and a single mom, right? She truly had she was able to send her child with grandma for the summer. Grandma's not going to educate that baby, right? That's not her job. That's not what she signed up for. And so I recognize the difficulty those people who need face-to-face are having, and I don't know what all the solutions are to that. And I also hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but part of my law practice, the LBJ group, we help with insurance claims. There's a lot of insurance companies who had a position in their policies that covered pandemic, because those don't happen that often, right? Why not cover it? And so if your business had to be closed by government law, there's a payout that goes with it. When I joined the General Assembly in 2013, there was one group of professionals higher than lawyers. They were insurance representatives. Now, I don't know what those numbers are today, but I also think that there are other politics beyond whose kids are going to school, right? It's the economy. I mean, they haven't hit it. They said, we got to get the economy going, right? But who's pushing that? What's the political machine behind it, right? When you see how much the banks have control of our legislatures, how much the insurance companies have of our legislatures, it's no surprising that all levels of government are pushing for our schools and for our economy to be back open for a variety of reasons. And again, that goes back to why I'm not surprised that our policies for protecting the least, those who have the least, are not clear, because we don't have a foundation for it.
And so I suppose that the president's push to Major League Baseball and the NBA and NFL and NCAA basketball and football, the push for them to go ahead to start their seasons to keep them up, that has to do with his idea that if he gets the economy booming again, that it increases his chances. Do you agree, Bishop?
Oh, everything Trump does is about Trump. So this push to get sports back, to get them back in the arenas, to get back to some semblance of normalcy, is about him, because it will be perceived that he's handling the pandemic well, that the economy's opening back up, that things are getting better. So he's trying to increase his chances of re-election. He really doesn't care about the people involved. He doesn't care about those leagues or anything. He cares about Donald J. Trump. That's all. That's it. That's all there is to it.
And he's also a master of watch what I'm doing in my hand over here, right? So he's a magician, right? He's a con artist. And so he's able to get your attention focused somewhere else. Listen, the same thing that we mentioned about Senator Harris and how the public outwardly criticism of her is harmful to us. The reason why it's harmful is because people on his side are able to take little nuggets of what we say and use it. And they saw that debate that we had when Black Lives Matter first kicked off, and he called our Black NFL players sons of bees, right? He saw the division within us that said half of us like, well, I'm watching football anyway. And the other half was like, how dare you watch football when Kaepernick doesn't have a job, right? And whatever the disagreement was, and who cares who's right or wrong, they're able to capitalize on those types of things and pay attention to those. And so that's part of what we have to consider in our criticism, albeit important, right? Are we giving things away for them to be able to use it? So I think this football, sports, all that is just the way he said, oh, I know they like their sports. I know they was willing to ignore it. Even progressives were willing to ignore me cussing out their mamas to be able to watch that pigskin on Sunday, right? And so he knows why it's important to get it out there so that people will be distracted from all the malarkey and otherwise that he's involved in.
Had Representative Jones stayed on, this would have been his golden opportunity, his showboat time, his 15 minutes of fame, because I'm going to ask you all, as we wind down, is there anything, Bishop Swann, that Donald Trump has done to benefit the country as a whole? He likes to say that he's done more for African Americans than any other president as far back as Lincoln. He forgets about LBJ and the Civil Rights Act and the Voters' Rights Act. We just don't act like he doesn't know. I mean, has he done anything that has benefited the average American bishop?
Let me address specifically he's done more for Black people than any other president, because this is a vitriolic, disingenuous talking point of the right and of those sycophantic Black folk who apologize for white supremacy and follow after Donald Trump. There are three real particular talking points that they bring up all the time. One is low Black unemployment. I just dealt with that.
Right.
Black unemployment dropped 1% under Donald Trump, and it dropped down to 5.8 from 6.8. It's now at 15%. It's up 10% now. That debunks the whole notion that Black unemployment, low Black unemployment, is a result of any policy or anything that Donald Trump has ever done. The second thing they talk about is prison reform. They talk about the First Step Act as if it was some comprehensive prison reform. It wasn't. Were there some good things in the First Step Act? Yes, but it could only benefit a minuscule number of people, period, and a smaller number of Black people. Now remember, First Step Act only applies to those in federal prison. The vast majority of Americans and the vast majority of African Americans that are in prison are in state prison systems and cannot even benefit from the First Step Act. And when you start talking about, well, he pardoned Black people, and you grab a handful of Black folk, well, he pardoned Joe Arpaio, he pardoned Dinesh D'Souza, and a bunch of other bigots as well. And the reality is, Barack Obama granted clemency and pardons to more people than any president in 64 years before him. Over 1,900 individuals got clemency, which included over 1,700 commutations of sentences and 212 pardons. He can't touch what Barack Obama did as far as that's concerned. So the whole notion of prison reform is a red herring. It's disingenuous. And then the third thing that they talk about all the time is HBCUs. Let's keep it a buck. First of all, Vernon Jones would have said Barack Obama didn't do this. The bill that Donald Trump signed restored $255 million in annual funding that lapsed last September. It was already in place since the Obama administration. It had lapsed and was not renewed by Congress. So there was a bipartisan piece of legislation to renew that $255 million, of which most of it did not go to HBCUs. Only 85 million of the 255 million went to HBCUs. The rest went to predominantly white institutions. And let's keep it 100. Only 5% of African Americans even attend HBCUs in the first place. So to sit here and pretend that Donald Trump saved, there's 102 HBCUs, and you sign legislation that's going to give 85 million to HBCUs, that would be less than $1 million to each HBCU if it was spread across all of them. None of them could survive off of less than $1 million. So this whole notion that he saved HBCUs is complete malarkey. But that's one of his main talking points. Low black unemployment, prison reform, HBCUs, none of which are real. So at the end of the day, Trump has done nothing for black people. Nothing.
Do you agree, Attorney Jones?
I mean, how can you not agree with that? How can you not agree that he has done absolutely nothing for African Americans? Not to mention, he has rolled back the clock by standing in front of a bunch of law enforcement graduates and telling them it's okay to just kind of hit their head against the side. He's rolled back the clock on all of the things that he has said, or all the progress that we have tried to make when it comes to whether it's excessive force or equality or redlining. He's rolled it back. So of course he doesn't get a bonus, but I am a forever optimist, Al. And so you ask, what can we give him props for? So I'm going to find something just so that we can at least have somebody giving him props. I'm going to give him props because just like he did for Apprentice, and side note, I tried out for The Apprentice the year that Omarosa made it. I was a law school student way back then, right? I made it to the 3rd round. It was really interesting. I watched the whole season, right? He has us paying attention. Outside of the pandemic, he has us paying attention. Now, we may not like what we see. It may be a train wreck we can't turn our head from. But he has many of us paying more attention than we've paid in a very, very long time. And so if I had to give him props for something, I hope we're really paying attention, like the bishop said, to the real numbers, not just what he has spewing out of his mouth, and we do something about it.
Back to this last commercial break. We're going to let our panelists, our remaining 2 panelists, give the viewers their best pitch on how we as Americans, especially African Americans, can get to the other side of this election victoriously. Okay.
Welcome to Royalty Love Creations Incorporated, where we serve as your one-stop shop. We specialize in graphic design of any kind. We assist in event planning, serving as coordinator or host. We provide business essentials and original stationeries for companies and entrepreneurs. We build appealing and professional websites. We specialize in marketing on social media. RLCinc Cinema covers video editing and provide appealing visuals and realistic sound effects. We format, custom design, and mass produce DVD and CD packages of your footage or audio for distribution. Serves as a performing arts professional, specializing in playwriting and script editing, and fully equipped to provide all theatrical related services. We direct and produce stage plays, short films, music videos, and much more. We write and perform songs to fit any mood or occasion. Please follow us on social media. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share our website with your friends. Looking forward to serving you soon.
Okay, ladies first. Attorney Ladon Blackett-Jones, thank you so much for coming. It has been a great time. I've said just in all of you, you are a soul sister. You are a powerhouse in your information, your wealth of information and knowledge regarding the law and politics is immense. And I know that someone in our viewing audience has heard, if not 10 things. I mean,
so sorry.
What you have given us is going to be helpful for them. Give America, the viewing audience, a pitch of what is expected, what we need for them to do in this election cycle, more specifically the presidential election.
So thank you first, Al, for having me on. Thank you for giving us this platform to talk very candidly about things that have been on my heart for some time. I think we need to keep it simple. Politics, when you start talking about taxes and reform and policy and parties, feels complicated. Feels more complicated than we need when we have children to raise and bills to pay, right? It feels distant because the people who seem to talk about it are in suits and drive nice cars and they have fancy titles. But the reality is, policy affects us. Every time you put gas in your car, it costs you a tax. Every time you order something from Amazon, you make somebody richer because of some tax policy while you're paying taxes on it. All right, every time you send your children to school, it's based on a district that you live in and people who are elected and who are in charge. So we need to start making politics simple. It's not complicated, right? The people that you choose to make the macaroni at Thanksgiving is chosen because they have ingredients that they put in it and they don't mess it up. And so the people that you choose to lead your schools or your country should be as simple as that. You have ingredients that you like, and you make a conscious effort to make sure first you go and make your voice be heard. Put on your face mask first, right? Your oxygen mask first. And make sure every time you vote. It'd be great if you could research people, but you know people in your community that know. Talk to them, listen. And if you don't know, just make sure you go and do your best to make your voice be heard. The next thing we do is be responsible by sweeping in front of our own front porch. You make sure everybody in your household and in your family are registered and they go vote. How often do we take care of our own families anyway? So keep it simple. Politics doesn't have to be difficult. You take care of yourself, you take care of those around you, and then if you have that extra wherewithal, you expand it to your community, whether it be your mentees or someone else. All we have to do is do what people marched for, what they asked for, what they begged for, what they died for, is vote. And even if this president tries to steal it, the rules are written down, y'all. Just play by the rules. Go in and early vote. Get your ballot in early. Get somebody to help you vote. We gotta stop making excuses. We have to understand the importance. We got to stop bringing each other down. And we dang sure got to make sure we don't let the Russian interference convince us that our own people ain't our people and get out there and vote. And I think that's how we went out.
Close us out, Bishop. Talk to him.
I concur. You know, I often tell people, you are not officially born until a politician signs your birth certificate. You're not officially dead until the politician signs your death certificate. And politics influences everything in your life between life and death. And so it is incumbent upon us to be civically engaged, to be involved in the political process, and to let our voices be heard. The reality is, the ancestors bled and died so that we would have the right to exercise our right to vote, to go to the ballot, to be heard. They made serious sacrifices. And we now live in a day and an age. We just recently commemorated the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, but underscoring the fact that a ruling of the Supreme Court in 2012 basically neutered it by getting rid of the formula that was in Section 4, which now makes Section 5, the enforcement, null and void. So we've got to restore the Voting Rights Act. We've got to ensure that we use all due diligence to beat down voter suppression. The problem here in white supremacist America is they don't care if we die. They care if we vote. And so we've got to get out there and we've got to vote. As Attorney Jones said, make sure that we're registered. We've got a hashtag that we use, hashtag collect your cousins. Get Ray, get everybody in your circle. Make sure that they are registered, make sure they're educated on the issues, and make sure they get out there on election day, either mail in, absentee, or get to the polls and cast their votes.
Thank you so much, Bishop Talbot Swann and Attorney Ladon Jones, for spending time with us here today. Believe me when I say that everything you said today is going to fall on ears that need to hear. I'm sorry, I'm apologizing to you, viewing audience, because we're supposed to have 3 people on this panel. I assure you and that I did not slant this. I wouldn't do that. Everybody received rules ahead of time. The format, I was going according to what we laid before. Representative Jones got upset. I really feel like he should have stayed. We could have worked everything out. I'm a fair person. Yes, I have preferences, but at the same time, I'm a very fair person. Everybody who knows me knows I come from a family of fairness, and I wouldn't do anything wrong. So he's not here because he chose not to be here. But those who stay, Bishop Swann and Attorney Jones, you are so greatly appreciated. From the Chocolate Diva Factory, which is the production team here at the Absolutely Al Show, we thank you. You have a home here with us. If you ever want to come back, if there's something on your heart or you're doing something, an endeavor that requires, a platform, even though I was a small, we have a viewing audience. Come back anytime, call me up. Yo, Al, we want to come back on. I need to come back on. I need to let your people know this. You are welcome here. We love you. God bless you. And I hope that the friendship will continue.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al, so much.
That was a hot discussion. And that abrupt exit, Lord have mercy. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know you heard something that you needed to hear. I know you heard something that you didn't quite know before. But thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you next week here on the Absolutely Al Show. Bye-bye. God bless.
Time to party. Absolutely Al.
That Al is one foxy gal.
Absolutely Al. That's me. Absolutely Al. Absolutely Al.
She's a boss, and that ain't no floss, cause she's dripping with that spicy Al sauce. Wife, mother of a baby boy, and after 14 years, she's still the greatest.
That's
boy.
right,
Brilliant,
baby.
resilient, passionate, and savvy. Ooh, that Al is such a baddie. Singer-songwriter, political fighter, trendsetter, ain't nobody better.
She's smooth, she's clean.